The views, language, and candor expressed on this series are designed to provoke thought and conversation amongst adults. Some opinions and perspectives may be unsuitable for those who are emotionally weak. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Coach's Decision with Chris P. Reed, where we dive into topics each week that could help you or someone that's close to you get through. Many of my clients are skilled at the game of life, but there are times when you need someone to help you protect you from yourselves. There are times when you need a coach's decision. My top client and producer will enlist the help of you, the audience, to navigate these times each week live. What you got for us today?
Hey, thanks everyone for joining. I'm your friendly neighborhood producer, MOB. Feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat. It's very interactive. So interactive, I'm not going to go over a thought today. I want to readdress another topic that we had. So we had a lot of comments and wanting a little bit more conversation, I would say, and in honor, I guess, of Women's History Month. Let's talk a little bit more about Eve.
Okay.
Like, what was going on with Eve in the Bible?
Okay. So how we got to this point was a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the origins of boredom and the concept of blaming others for the predicaments that we find ourselves in. And then the idea of Eve led Adam down the wrong path. And the one thing that can't be disputed in this concept is that the serpent was involved, Eve was involved, and Adam was involved. When we talk about the serpent, which you put into the mix, say, well, where's the serpent's culpability? The serpent absolutely told the truth. He told Eve that she would not perish from eating from the tree of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil, and she didn't. Adam was given the fruit by Eve. Unbeknownst to him, it was poisonous and it poisoned him. So Eve ultimately listened to the serpent, help her betray her beloved. And it's all in the text. I'm not just coming off the top on this. I'm not just making this up. Now, one of the things that we unfortunately had a situation was people were stating, or I was getting feedback that I was being unfair or critical as it relates to Eve's implication in all this. And so my question for the audience is, how am I misconstruing these words? How am I not understanding that the sequence was Eve and Adam were told something specifically by God while they were living in grace and in paradise? Eve decided that wasn't good enough and let someone else talk her into going against God's wishes. Then when she had the veil lifted from her eyes and seen all of the things, the knowledge of good and evil, even though she had seen the evil, decided to then spread the evil to Adam, her beloved. Where am I wrong in this, audience? Help me out.
So can you address the first question, I guess, was God told Adam and Eve didn't know. That was the first comment.
That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that he's having private conversations with them. Once Eve, so keep in mind, Adam was made from the dust. Eve was then made from the rib while Adam was asleep. Once they became a union together in the garden, God made sure that everybody was on the same page. If think about it like this, if God had have just told Adam, why would the snake have to talk Eve into anything? Why would the serpent have had to talk Eve into anything if that were the case?
Let's talk about that a little bit. So the serpent, why did the serpent go to Eve and not Adam?
Because I believe Eve was corruptible. Now, I'm not saying that one of the things that I think I've been trying to defend myself against in comments and things like that is that I'm making Eve every woman. Eve's not Whitney Houston. She's not every woman. What I'm talking about is specifically in this situation, Eve obviously was the one that was more easily corruptible because he went for her after he separated her from from the herd, right? So when you think about hunting, you always get the weak one and the one that you can separate from the herd. And so in this situation specifically, what happened was he waited till Eve was off on her own, which I don't understand. What was she even doing over there? Why was she distracted living in paradise?
So if you want to attack somebody, if
Mhm.
you want to attack a home or somebody, do you go to the weaker one or do you go to the stronger one?
It depends on how strong you are. Now, obviously, when you talk about bully rules, you're supposed to knock out the biggest one, right? You always knock out the biggest one to set the message to the rest of them that don't mess with you. In this regard, obviously, Eve was the weaker target. In this regard, obviously, Eve was distracted and for whatever reason wasn't satisfied with all of the amazing grace that God had bestowed upon her. And that's the actual issue. If Eve was good, this is not a conversation. If Eve, think about this. Think about you as a person. If you have everything at your disposal and all that you want, people can't tempt you with something else. So they can't tempt you with other. If you and your spouse are if you're everything that your spouse desires, you don't have to worry about nam nada coming and messing that up. They can't be distracted. They're incorruptible. Why was Eve corrupted? Is there someone that can answer that for me?
Can we address Monique's comment?
Okay.
She was suggesting that Eve may have cheated on Adam.
I believe that Eve.
Her exact words was, "These hoes ain't loyal."
So in the idea of this, so we've had conversations previously about levels of fidelity. And I'm talking to anybody that's married or knows somebody that's married and thinks they understand how marriage works. Okay. If my wife leaves and someone a stranger, no doubt, talks my wife into betraying me, and then she comes back and does so, she has inevitably cheated on me. She cheated on the love and the trust that I've bestowed upon her for sure. Now, is there any disagreement there? I got time.
There's no disagreement. You can cheat in many different ways.
Absolutely.
If you break down the word cheat,
yeah,
it's having an unfair advantage.
Absolutely.
At that point, she's listening to someone else, or she's trying to get an advantage that she didn't have.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Tracy wants to know, was Adam even strong or was he the weak one?
This is what I don't want people to take away from this conversation. Trusting and loving and believing in someone is not a weakness. If Tracy is married and she eats something and offers it to her husband, does he ever ask her, what's in this? Where did you get this? Is he giving her an inquisition about something she's handed to him? Or does he trust that she has his best interest and taste buds in mind when she hands him said food item? There's no reason for Adam to inspect food that she handed. None of these verses. So we have the verse here from the King James Version. In this, it says, where are we here? Mr. the garden, you should not eat, serpent, When the woman saw that the tree was good for fruit, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit and did eat, and gave also unto her husband. And he did eat. It didn't say she took him to the tree. She came back with fruit and was like, this is good. Try this. He blindly ate the fruit. She coerced him into this situation. So does Tracy's husband ask, does this have peanuts in it? Or, what is the situation with her situation where her husband is asking all these questions when she's trying to feed him?
You're saying that she was deceitful.
I think she was. And I have a smoking gun with this deceit.
The Bible was saying that the serpent was deceitful. So you saying Eve was?
Two things can be true. Okay. Two things can be true. The idea of the serpent being deceitful was the serpent didn't tell the whole story. The serpent told Eve, according to the text, that God had knowledge that she did not have. God had something that Eve didn't have. Eve wanted it. She was longing for something that she did not have. Fine. We're all in agreement of that. There is no disparity. All right. No matter what version you go to, there's no disparity that Eve wanted something God had. Adam wasn't even thinking about what somebody else had. He was not coveting God at all. This is now it was only one commandment in the beginning. Okay. It wasn't 10. It was just one. Just don't eat over here. Right. Eve couldn't help but to not abide by one commandment, even though everything was at her disposal. In that situation, the serpent told her, "You surely will not die." Immediately is an implied dynamic there to me, right? You certainly will not die if you eat of this fruit. Cool. Eve ate the fruit. When she didn't drop dead, then she said, "Oh my God." But at that time, when Eve didn't drop dead, what happened was the knowledge of good and evil was revealed to Eve, number one. She then immediately became ashamed, number two, and the veil of innocence was lifted from Eve. At that point in time, what I will tell you is if Eve really loved Adam, she wouldn't wish this pain and this knowledge on her worst enemy, let alone the man that she loved. She had just came from bliss, just came from innocence, knew what it felt like. All of a sudden, you come into shame and you want to share it as my wife? You came in, you done messed up. You know you done messed up, right? You know you done messed up, right? You bought the beer at 10:30. You done bought the beer at 10:30. And now you in there singing to me, trying to get me to drink the beer. Come on, man. Come on. This is a bad look.
At that point, instead of Adam and Eve being each other's helpmeet, Eve had chosen another helpmeet, which was the serpent. They were the actual couple at that point. That's what she was listening to.
I don't. In those days, I don't know how long you had to talk for y'all go together. But the moral of the story is, she allowed for someone else to distract her from someone who had never done her any wrong. She allowed for a stranger to influence her, where her and Adam had a bond that was undeniable. She was created for him. They were created for each other, in fact. She let somebody else interfere with that because she didn't have enough wherewithal or self-esteem or whatever the case may be. Maybe she was just overly curious. I don't know why she was made with this inalienable flaw, but for whatever reason, she got distracted. I'm okay with you making mistakes. What I'm saying from a coaching perspective is, don't compound the mistake by involving people who are innocent. Adam was an innocent bystander. For some reason, some of these people are saying that Adam bears culpability and bears responsibility. And I contend that I believe, based on what I've read and what I've heard, now somebody can present to me other information, an alternative perspective. But what I've seen thus far is that Adam was an innocent bystander. Everything was fine just a week ago. Now Eve came, she done got talked into, she done got hoodwinked, bamboozled, and run amok, and then decided consciously to spread that to the person that she had loved and got everybody messed up forever.
They didn't know each other that long. Did she love him?
She was built to love him. She didn't have no choice.
Where was Adam at? Do we know he wasn't cheating too? Where was he at? Why was she by herself to go find her own food? Why they wasn't having lunch together?
She wouldn't, to me, if he was there, and so you bring that up, that's very poignant. If he were there, they would have partaken of the fruit simultaneously. There would be no reason for her to eat first to see what would happen. So I don't believe that it was a situation whereas he was there, she was there, he saw her eat it, saw the look on her face after all of these revelations came to her, and then took a bite. I don't want no fool. He was a fool for love, obviously. Sucker for love.
So is the lesson in
Was that?
forced to love Adam?
No, I don't think it was a situation where she was forced to interact with. I think it was a pleasure for
Oh,
them both to be in each other's presence. I think they were designed to be companions. Remember, God felt Adam was bored and should have a companion because all of the other animals had companionship. So he made a mate, a companion, a wife, and that was Eve. Eve wasn't cool just being a wife. Adam didn't ask Eve to go look for nothing else. Adam didn't ask for Eve to do anything. Eve did this of her own accord. The greatest gift that God has bestowed on us is free will. Now, Eve did exercise the free will, but the consequences of that exercise is why we have this situation today, this eternal sorrow. The Franciscans don't call it the original sin, they call it the original wound. They feel like sin is too much for a child to be born with and then die with under early stages. So they call it a wound because you can heal from wounds. And through the grace and the mercy of Christ, you can heal from this wound and you can make it into salvation ultimately. But the idea of being born with this wound didn't have to happen. And I contend that as much as we want to try to cast aspersions and blame on Adam, I think that's a psychological defect that we have as human beings. You and I talked about whenever someone gets sick, the first thing they want to know, regardless how constructive it is who made me sick? Who gave me COVID? That does Nobody cares who gave you COVID. Why are you so concerned to do this investigation? The fact is you have it and you have to deal with it. You have to stand on business and be responsible at some point for your actions and for the reactions. And unfortunately, over time, we've become apologists for people who are obviously in the wrong.
what it sounds like you're saying though is that Adam was somewhere being peaceful,
Mhm.
and Eve disrupted his peace.
Disrupted. It's always going to come back to that with you. Yeah. Obviously, Eve disrupted the peace of humanity at this point. It was because now there's cascading effects where it wasn't just Adam. This thing rippled. This was a ripple in the pond of eternity that we're still feeling the waves from. I wish that I could understand. I wish that she could defend, or there was some type of idea of why it wasn't good enough, why things wasn't cool the way they were, because Adam wasn't distracted. Adam didn't go off and try to do other things. And for whatever reason, she became disenchanted and distracted and wanted more. Why was she insatiable? Insatiability is a sickness. Is every time when you get something, you wonder when you're going to get it again or the next. That's called addiction. That's not like she was
I
the
think
first
the
addict.
issue is Adam was somewhere out here naming birds and animals. It was intended to her love languages.
I don't understand why she couldn't go to work with him. At no point in time did it make it seem like they had a situation where she was neglected. See, now you're trying to add to the concept that Eve was neglected, and that's why she wandered off, because he was working too much. He's killing them for the OT. And then and while he at work trying to provide and trying to make sure that this garden is catered to, then she's like, oh, all you're worried about is the garden and naming these bushes and trees and streams and such. No, he was a dutiful, responsible, respected husband because he was made specifically in God's image. They were made in God's image. But he, without a shadow of a doubt, the first Adam was that dude. And he got God.
He's the only Adam. But
That's not we'll have another conversation about that another day.
okay. So Tracy says, but she is not to blame totally.
Give me a percentage then. We can negotiate this. Eve is the originator of the original sin. Eve is the first betrayer. Eve is the first, I don't want to call her an adulteress. That's a little blasphemous. Eve is the first deceiver. Eve is because we can't use the serpent. We can't use the serpent. I read something recently that said that Cain and Abel were the first true human beings because they were birthed, whereas Adam and Eve were created. You know what I mean? They didn't grow up. They were made adults from the jump. Adam and Eve didn't grow up together. They were made as adults. Cain and Abel actually were birthed, so they were the first human beings in that regard. But the fact is, Eve was grown from the jump and should have known better.
What's wrong with being curious? Adam was being lonely and she was off somewhere. She was just curious.
Because when you have enough, this is the problem. When you have enough and you're sustained and you're serene, your mind doesn't wander. They say an idle mind is the devil's playground or the devil's workshop, one of the two, right? When you have an idle mind and you allow yourself to be distracted and trail off mentally, that's when the worst things creep in and you start thinking about stuff that has no true value. She had all the value right there at her disposal, right in front of her eyes. And she chose to be distracted. But we are getting away from the fact that even if Eve was distracted, even if Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge, when Eve received that knowledge, it wasn't good. We're all in agreement of that. Why would she then hand that to Adam?
What's wrong with, so Olipop, it's a natural human characteristic to strive for better.
So we believe
makes you better, right?
So we believe that Eve thought that feeling was better than the feeling she had before she bit. Is that what we're saying? Because every scripture and everything is saying that she was ashamed. I've read this word too many times. Ashamed is not. Who feels good about being ashamed? Somebody can raise their hand on here. There's no greatness in ashamed. The Bible says you can't serve two masters. You can now listen. Y'all trying to make coordinated discussions and considerations and concessions for this woman's choice. This woman, and we are celebrating Women's History Month. So it's only apropos that we talk about the first woman in history and say that if she just stand on this and do this time, just do this time. You know what I'm saying? Stand up and be like, you know what? I was wrong and I wronged him. And I wronged humanity when I made a bad decision and then compounded said bad decisions. It's not about making bad decisions because things do happen to you in life. When you start dragging other people into those bad decisions, that's when you're being the worst possible human being. Nobody should disagree with that.
If we're assigning percentages, though, we have to go by the punishment. And I think she received the worst punishment of everybody, of the three of them. All three were punished.
Right.
I think she received the worst punishment, so she was the most at fault, I would say. Adam had to do some stuff. Eve had to do a lot of stuff. Pain, she gave birth.
Yep.
And the serpent had to do
climb on his belly. Yeah, he just had to be on his belly for eternity. And the thing about it is the spirit or the essence of the serpent. Nobody nowadays, I believe and I hope, thinks that every snake that's around is an incarnation of the devil. Okay. So the idea of the devil is a serpent is just unfair to snakes. That's number one. This was a possession type situation way before the exorcism, right? So in the concept of he used the vessel to craft a story to tell Eve, but Eve has been unchanged as a woman all this time, thousands and thousands of years. Some of the insecurities, some of the thoughts that creep into people's minds, and it's not just women because we have a blended type of psychological dynamic here, but more women than men claim to be insecure. More women than men claim to have doubts and reservations about their place in the world or their place as mothers or their place as wives. And Eve was the originator of these things if you just read the text. Keep in mind, nothing in the text that I've read as a historian tells me the type of mother Eve was, besides her kids killed each other, right? Like, but nothing else says how good she was as a mom. So I can't indict Eve as a mom. I'm not going to blame Eve for Cain's actions, but I can absolutely indict Eve as a wife, because if my wife fed me poison, she's a bad wife and she's a bad woman.
Daniel said she was not going to be the only one going down with the ship. That's why she gave.
That's selfish. It's self-centered. It's self-loathing, and it's sad. It's when you think about the story from that perspective, you were you exposed yourself to something, and then you purposely, consciously chose to expose the only other person that has ever cared about you to the exact same torment immediately. She didn't even like, and I understand time and all that may be a construct, but it was damn like you seen how bad this was, felt ashamed, and was like, oh no, I can't be ashamed by myself. I can't have him walk around here smiling. She was Peg Bundy. I can't walk around here smiling and all blissful and happy and naming these animals without realizing how horrible this world is and how naked we are.
It sounds like a bad time to me.
It
But so the Bible is full of lessons and knowledge.
Mhm.
I don't know if we're missing the knowledge that's in the stories, trying
Mhm.
to see who's most at fault. Like you said, the COVID,
Mhm.
and Jessica saying us women are still being punished. Is that part of? So what should we gain from this? What should we learn? Should we focus on who to blame, or should we get, as a man, should you learn not to eat food that you don't know what's in it? Like what?
I think that, at some point in time, you have to believe someone, you have to trust someone, you have to care about someone. And the people who are closest to you are the ones that are going to disappoint you the most, just by the nature of volume, right? You care so much that they're the ones that end up destroying your trust. But in the idea of what I would love to learn about this is, or what I would love to learn and to teach about this is that you shouldn't ever compound bad decisions. You shouldn't ever want to share or spread negativity. And I understand, over the centuries, misery loves company and all that other kind of stuff. But when she had a situation that she put herself in, you could try to blame the snake, the serpent. You could try to blame this cascadation of blame is what I think is one of the worst fallbacks. Just like we talked about who gave me this and who did this, who begat what from an emotional feeling of mine. You have to take ownership and say, what did I do or did not do to allow for this to occur? How can I prevent this from happening in the future to the best of my ability? And then it becomes a serenity prayer. You just need to understand what you can and cannot control and try to avoid those things that you can control that don't bring you peace, that don't bring you happiness, that don't bring you balance. And if you do that more often than not, you'll be on the side of happiness. You'll find yourself in more areas of serenity than you ever have. But when you get distracted and worried about what God got going on and worried about what somebody else got is telling you, and you've been told something specifically counterintuitive to what you're being told by the serpent, you have had situations where you say, I knew I shouldn't have. I man, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. The Holy Spirit, your women's intuition, your conscience, whatever you want to call it, something is guiding you and telling you, something is speaking to you to say, this ain't for you. You shouldn't be doing this. This is not right. This is not just. And it's those times where we go against that we find ourselves in the most peril. But if we just stop there, we would still be kind of fine. The problem is when we don't stop there and we pull other people down with us. And that's the lesson I would like to have dispensed upon the audience, is that it's okay for you to take yourself down. But if you take yourself down, do your time. Don't be the person that get caught. And then when the police got you, like, come on out, y'all. They caught us. Come from behind them, that garbage can. Come from behind. You telling on everybody because you got. That don't be that person. And we have a lot of people like that, not just criminally, but emotionally. We have people that are miserable because they just can't get right. They don't take their medicine or whatever the case may be, and they're determined to bring you there with them. It's a very sad cycle.
And so Cleveland says that women are still listening to the serpents today, which could be a pastor, could be a boss, could be a mechanic,
Could be.
someone that's not their husband. They still have not learned the lesson yet.
Two things on that. I love
Sydney says.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Oh, you want to hear the rest?
Yeah, I do.
Sorry.
I do.
Let me gain my composure.
Okay.
Sydney says Eve was the first woman to be used.
Okay. Here's the situation. If you're running a one-man race, you're going to get first. So there's nothing great about her being the first. She was, she was there first. I do agree that she was manipulated. I don't have a problem. Once again, and I'll state this again, and I'll continue to state this. Her being manipulated is not the argument here, and it's not the problem here. We're not blaming the serpent in this episode. We are blaming the fact that once it was done, she proliferated that manipulation onto Adam. Adam is victimized at that point.
So should we blame every woman for another woman's actions?
No, I don't. I think that any and all are bad things to say in a context, right?
Work.
Huh?
I think that's how curses work, though.
No, because humanity got blamed for her consequences. We all collectively are facing the repercussions of what she did. And so I'm not saying that women are to blame in this regard. What I am saying is if women are still abiding by or exercising some of these same sentiments and actions when it comes to letting their girlfriend talk them into stuff that has nothing to do with what their husband said, letting their mom run their household, the Bible says leave and cleave. When you choose that man, first of all, be smart in your choice. Stop choosing bad men and then blaming everybody else for why you're unhappy with this bad man. First of all, you be a good person. Secondly, choose a good person that's equally yoked. And then that's enough. That's enough. You two, the Bible says two is better than one, so that if one falls down, the other one can pick them up. You and him are the two that are better than one. Let that be enough. When you start listening to other people is when you diminish his ability to coach you, counsel you, support you, love you, and appreciate you. You don't need to outsource those things if you got the right one. Now, if you don't, that's fine. See if he's willing to try to be the right one. But what you shouldn't do is go behind his back and poison him. Okay. I don't know why we're not getting that.
I think we got it. You got time for the dream? We need to hear.
Yeah. I got time for the dream. So
let us know.
Give me the speech. I think that gets me going.
Tell us about the dream, Coach. Tell us about the dream.
All right. So in this week's Dream of the Week, it's a situation that toggles back and forth between things that I experienced, obviously, and then my fanciful imagination, my subconscious. So there was a situation whereas I applied for a role, a promotion, and I went through the interview and thought that I was going to get the promotion and ultimately did not achieve the promotion. And I was fine with it. That was cool. But when I came back and talked to my spouse and talked to my friends and talked to my mom, everybody had a contention that the reason why I didn't get the promotion was because of DEI stuff and because of racism. And so in the dream, everybody's like, man, they just did that to you because you was black. You know what I'm saying? They just hating on you. You got all these skills. You got all this education, blah, blah, blah. You black. And so my best friend, I'm having a conversation with him and he was like, well, there is an alternative that you could take. And that alternative is you can go get the procedure. And I was like, I was unaware. What's the procedure? And so like, you know how dudes are getting fake hair and fake hairlines and all this other stuff? They now have a procedure where you can go and become white. So talk to your wife and see if that's something that y'all want to do in order for you to elevate your economic status, your career, and all this and all that. And but just know, once you go white, you can't reverse it. They don't have a procedure to make people black, of course. But if you want to go white, y'all save up enough. And I think your insurance might help out too. And I was like, okay. So I started researching it and come to find out Sammy Sosa and Michael Jackson had started this company where you could become white. Now, for all of those who don't know who Sammy Sosa is or remember who Sammy Sosa was, I do have a visual aid. That is Sammy Sosa when he was playing baseball on the left, and then white Sammy Sosa was after he had retired, had all this money. He was the home run king and all this other stuff. So he had started this company where he can make you white. And so I contemplate whether I'm gonna do it or not. And my boy was like, "Hey, just take some time, think about it. I got a guy, I got an in. My guy was connected, and he can get you on the list, and you could become white, and then it's on from there. You'll still look black, but you'll be white." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So the next morning, I go to drop my daughter off at school. When I go to drop my daughter off at school, I see two people, and they look like they used to be black. They was white though. And I was like, "Oh, the procedure is real. He's not lying," because now I'm starting to see it everywhere. And then I woke up. And I also have a visual aid for you to see people who probably started off as black and then became white.
Hold on. Not IT. Not the original gangster.
Right. So, but that was my dream.
That's where it ended. Did you get
That's
to
it. That's it.
try for the job again?
That's it, bro. That's my dreams be my dreams, man. You I don't know why you want to see finale. You are very, very different in your idea for closure. I don't require closure in my dreams. I don't require closure in my relationships or my dreams. I'm good.
You're not in your relationships?
No. When it's over, it's over. It's okay.
You didn't need to know why you didn't get the job you applied for?
No. In real life, I would like to have a debrief. I would like to understand where I didn't measure up. If it's internal, I can just see the person that took the job and kind of see what it was. But there's nothing to truly be gained. I'm not getting a doctorate. Like it's things that you have to be willing to do. And sometimes you're not willing to do those things. Now, in real life, I'm not willing to be white in order to get a title. Okay. But in this dream, I was expanding my horizons to say, okay, wait a second. How bad do I want this?
What was the mood in the dream? Did you think that was good advice?
I did. I thought it was very thoughtful. For usually black men don't really get involved like that in emotional things that could kind of strain the friendship. But he let me know, even if you white, cuz I'm gonna be your like I'm still gonna be your best friend. I know what you're doing. But another thing we do as black folks is the bread. Like if you go, like if you say I did this for the bread, I did this for $800,000 a year. It's like I can see it. Yeah, that makes sense. You still cool. You sound the same and all of that. You just look a little different. It's no different than getting into an accident.
Do we feel Michael Jackson sold more albums?
Yes.
And that was the reason?
No, I don't believe so. I believe his mass appeal escalated substantially when he became ambiguously colored.
Okay.
Let me just say this. Name the other international pop star that was black.
I can't.
Okay, cool. So, yep, that was my dream. But we good?
Yeah, we good.
All right, cool. So, all right, folks. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. We definitely want you to tune in next week to A Coach's Decision with Crispy Reed. Bring your baggage and drop it off, and we'll sort through it. Until next week, take it easy, or at least take it any way you can get it. Make sure you subscribe, like now. Go ahead and like now. You might as well. You're here already. And tell a friend, and we'll see y'all next week. So why was you so